The views, comments, and opinions of the following program do not necessarily reflect those of Morris Media Studios, MorrisMediaLive.com, or its affiliates. Listener discretion is advised.
In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. Assalamu alaikum. That means peace be unto you. I'm Sister Charlene Muhammad, and welcome to Liberated Sisters on MorrisMediaLive.com, streaming also on my Facebook page. Ramadan Mubarak, blessed Ramadan to all of the fasting Muslims across the world and those who are not necessarily of the Muslim faith who are fasting right along with us. May Allah bless us to complete our fast of Ramadan successfully, as well as our Quranic reading, our doing of good, and all of the things, the bad habits that we would like change. May He see us on the other end, having completed that. Today, Liberated Sisters is bringing you the Muhammad's Economic Blueprint from the Time and What Must Be Done, Part 30. This is the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan's The Time and What Must Be Done, Part 30, Muhammad's Economic Blueprint. Opening out the show will be Student Minister Ishmael Muhammad with our prayer, and then Minister Farrakhan with the divine message. I'm Sister Charlene Muhammad saying thank you so much, Sister Felicia, for having us here. Thank you for those who are sticking it in with Liberated Sisters. This is a very serious time in our country, our nation, the Black nation, as well as the entire world. And so let's continue to heed the guidance and instructions from the man of God. And I pray that you and all of your loved ones are well. If it's impacting our community or can uplift us as a people, let's talk about it. Peace.
This house is dedicated to knowledge and to the spreading of knowledge. Elijah Muhammad inspired new thought, new mind, new way of civilization among black people. But he wanted a house from which a light could be lifted up to give guidance to all who would be guided as this world begins to close down. This National Center for the re-education and retraining of the black man and woman, but for the totality of the human family of our planet. I named this mosque after the only woman that the Qur'an names a chapter after. The mother of Jesus, Maryam. All human beings need to be re-educated. That is the purpose of the National Center.
Greetings and welcome to the Nation of Islam's worldwide broadcast, offering the life-giving teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad as represented by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. We would like, as always, to begin our program with prayer. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, all praise is due to Allah, the Lord of the worlds, the Beneficent, the Merciful. Master of the day of judgment in which we now live, Thee alone do we worship, in Thine aid we seek. O Allah, guide us on the right path, the path of those upon whom You have bestowed favors, not the path of those upon whom Your wrath is brought down, nor of those who go astray after they have heard Thy teachings. Our Lord, punish us not, if we forget or make a mistake. Our Lord, do not lay on us a burden which thou didst lay on those before us. Our Lord, impose not on us afflictions which we do not have the strength to bear, and pardon us and forgive us, and grant us your mercy and your protection. For surely thou art our patron. Ameen. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, I bear witness there is no God but Allah, who came in the person of Master Far Muhammad, and I bear witness that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is his messenger, Messiah. And I further bear witness that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is their divine reminder, their divine servant and warner among us. I thank Allah for the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and his father and teacher, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. It is in their names that I greet all of you with the greeting words of peace. Assalamu alaikum. We welcome you once again to the Nation of Islam's weekly broadcast. We welcome all of our listeners who are listening on our Final Call radio, and we hope that you will enjoy the replaying or reintroduction of these timely broadcasts that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan made beginning in 2013 on the subject, the time, and what must be done. Before we hear from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, we want to encourage all who are watching, all who are listening, to continue to practice the guidelines given by the CDC on social distancing that will help to prevent the spread of COVID-19 in our community. No matter what the governors are saying and their attempts to loosen restrictions to open up the economy, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan urges us and instructs us to continue to practice the social distancing even while these governors are opening up the cities and the state for the people to come back out from their homes. We must protect ourselves and our families and our loved ones, for this is a very deadly virus. With that said, my dear beloved brothers and sisters, we thought in a time like this, as we focus more on ourselves and our health, that we would replay the broadcasts that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan did on the subject of Muhammad's economic program or blueprint, ending poverty and want. In this broadcast, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan introduces us to what foods we should eat, what foods we should store in our homes. He talks about the disparities between the black and the white, and the gap, the wealth gap between black and whites in this country. I think that you will find this broadcast very instructive, very illuminating, for Muhammad's economic blueprint, ending poverty and want by God's grace, will give us a vision of what we as a people must do to solve our problems. In the words of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, he tells us that if you just go back and feed on the word, the picture that this vision will give you will come back up in your mind. And if it is rooted in your heart, then soon that which is a vision today will be made a reality tomorrow. It is a vision that has to be supported by a moral commitment by us as a people. The scripture says, where there is no vision, the people perish. So the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan further said that in order to build a nation, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad had to give our people a vision of what it is going to take. We have to have land, and there is no compromising this. Do you know, brothers and sisters, that the future is in our hands? The minister said, you don't have to beat up on other people. You just have to do right by yourself. And in a time like this, doing right by yourself is to practice social distancing. To do right by yourself is to eat the proper foods and not eat too much and all the time, so that your immune system is strong to fight off this COVID-19. It's not a guarantee, but studies have already shown that those who have contracted the virus and those who did not make it had already compromised and weakened immune systems. So we have to do right by your and myself. Lastly, our beloved minister said, black people are their own agent of change. The change that you want, the change that I want, it has to come from ourselves. And we have to make that commitment to be the agents of the change we desire. The Qur'an tells us that Allah never changes the condition of a people until the people change their own condition. God helps those who help themselves, and He doesn't change the condition of a people until the people change within themselves. As we are sheltered in place, reflecting and praying, we have to resolve that when the Passover has ended, that we are going to be the agents of the change we desire. We hope that you will enjoy. This is part 30 of The Time and What Must Be Done, Muhammad's economic blueprint, ending poverty and want. We hope that you will enjoy the message from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, coming from God Himself through His Messiah, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, that we can build a future for ourselves, protect ourselves in the time of the judgment of God in America and in the world. No one need to perish. God has come in the person of Master Fard Muhammad and given to us the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. We hope that you will enjoy part 30 of The Time and What Must Be Done.
Today is Savior's Day for us in the Nation of Islam. It is the celebration of the birth of one who was born February 26, 1877, in the holy city of Mecca in Arabia. He made himself manifest to us on July 4th, 1930, and began to teach among us, fulfilling what is written in the scriptures of the coming of God under the name the Son of Man, who would come out of the east into the west, seeking that which was lost. The great Mahdi, the long expected guide by the Muslims, and Messiah, long expected by the Christians and the Jews. We believe that this was fulfilled in the coming of this great one who came under disguise, looking like a Caucasian, and that would allow him to move easily among Caucasians to get to his people, the black people of America, fulfilling what is written in the scriptures. He came in sinful flesh to condemn sin in the flesh. He came as a thief in the night, while the people were under the darkness of ignorance. He came. He was a light that shined in the darkness, but the darkness comprehended it not. People saw a man, people heard a man, and he did a great work. He was a holy man coming under the cover of darkness, which is symbolized in the Bible as the Holy Ghost that came under darkness and came upon Mary, a virgin, a people that were a virgin people who had never had an intercourse or relationship with God, that out of them would come a messenger of God. But today, we have had that relationship, and now we have a direct connection with the Lord of the worlds. And after being with us for 3 years and 4 months, in that time of intercourse or relationship, out of it came a human being, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, as his messenger, Messiah, but now the exalted Christ that the whole world is looking for. I stand to represent them to you as a teacher and guide, and as a warner to America, her people, and the nations of the earth. But before I get into our subject matter, I want to begin with a few scriptures that I want this audience and all of those watching to internalize, so that when this lecture is over, I want to see if you are in agreement with what we say, and if in agreement we are willing to act upon the principles that you will hear. The scripture says in the book of Proverbs, the 29th chapter, the 18th verse, where there is no vision, the people perish, but he that keepeth the law, happy is he. So today's subject, by Allah's grace, will give us a vision of what we as a people must do to solve our problems, such that if you just go back Feed on the word. The picture that this vision will give you will come back up in your mind. And if it is rooted in your heart, then soon that which is a vision today will be made a reality tomorrow. It is a vision that has to be supported by a moral commitment by us as a people. So God says in the Holy Qur'an, in the 13th chapter, the 11th verse, quote, "Surely Allah changes not the condition of a people until they change their own condition." And in the 8th chapter, the 53rd verse, it reads, "This is because Allah never changes a favor which He has conferred upon a people until they change their own condition, and because Allah is hearing and knowing." Now, in the Bible, God sets up a hypothesis. And that hypothetical that God sets up, I want you to pay attention because we quote it a lot, but I want us to deepen our understanding of it. If my people, which are called by my name, will humble themselves and pray and seek my face or my favor and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven, forgive their sins, and heal their land. These scriptures make it abundantly clear that you and I, we are the agent of change that we are looking for. But you and I have to be willing to make that change within ourselves. But how can you change something unless something is introduced to you that will stimulate you to make that change? So it is your response to what we will give to you today, which will allow us to become the change that we are looking for. So let us get right to the point. My subject today is part of a year-long subject titled "The Time and What Must Be Done." Today we will point out what you and I must do to affect our condition positively, and what America must do to save herself, and what members of the Jewish community must do in order to be a part of that which God makes new, and free themselves of the curse of those who made a book that they touted as equal to or superior to that book which God revealed to them, called the Torah. Over 48 years ago, at a time of great crisis, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad outlined in the Muhammad Speaks newspaper a plan that sought to address the economic plight of black people in the United States. It was presented at that time as an economic savings program or a 3-year saving plan. And it was the greatest effort in the history of black people in America to break our harmful spending habits, pool our earnings, and redirect our wealth in ways that would lead to self-sufficiency in America. The program called on not only Muslims, but all black wage earners, the poor, the middle class, and the wealthy, to make affordable contributions on a regular basis into a single national treasury. But why did the Honorable Elijah Muhammad give us this plan 48 years ago? The Honorable Elijah Muhammad warned us that 100% inflation would come to America, totally destroying the value of the dollar. He wrote that a financial crash was on the way, more severe than the stock market crash in 1929. And he wrote that America would experience a loss of wealth so severe that it would force the descendants of slaves to finally get up and do something for themselves economically. And today, in 2013, we are in December of this year, 100 years since the creation of the Federal Reserve Bank and the Internal Revenue Service and the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League. And since then, America's debt has gone from $2 billion to more than $16.4 trillion. Now, they set these institutions up to work in unity. The Federal Reserve, the IRS, and the ADL. One was to create debt. The other was to enforce a tax policy to take from the American citizens enough to pay that debt. And the watchdog of the whole thing was to see who would recognize who did this. And that's when the Anti-Defamation League would raise the cry of anti-Semitism. Now, America is seeing herself in ruin because of it. Though they are telling you the inflation rate is a low 1.7%, Federal Reserve Chairman Ben Bernanke is now running the printing presses 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, to prop up a falling economy with money that is backed by nothing. The money that they are printing has no value. It's phony money, fiat money. Every month, the Federal Reserve is flooding the monetary system with $85 billion in fiat or phony money. It is valueless paper that makes whatever wages we earn lose its value. They can pacify us with the talk of recovery, but your bill for milk, for bread, for oil, for gasoline, for cereal, for butter, for transportation, for the essential goods that make life livable for the American people, those prices are skyrocketing. Yet your wages are not keeping pace. You're making $7 and a few pennies hourly wage. Well, now we have 29 states under severe drought, ruining crops and livestock with one major storm after another, and all the calamities that are happening. This only adds to the pressure on an economy that is already on life support. Now the people are being taxed to pay for this, but the debt is so far beyond what little the people have that they can never pay it down. And to tax the people further would deprive them more of the essentials of life, which they are barely getting now. The fact is that we are now facing the grim reality that everything that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad predicted has now come to pass. Today we find ourselves in dire straits and slipping deeper and deeper into the abyss of poverty and want. And in this latest economic downturn, the so-called Great Recession, blacks continue to suffer disproportionately more than any other people. Blacks make up 13% of the U.S. population, but own a meager 1% of America's total wealth. America's total wealth, that's land, buildings, every business that's on the land, is about $65 trillion. And we own 1%, about $650 billion. Americans are losing their homes to foreclosure at a rate of 1 million a year. 5 million Americans have lost their homes so far. And the black foreclosure rate is 80% higher than the rate of whites. All of the financial gains made by the black middle class over the last 30 years has now been totally wiped out. 2.6 million black Americans lost their jobs. The official unemployment rate is 7.8%. It's inching downward just a little, but last month, the official rate for blacks shot up over a full point from 13% to 14%. But these numbers are deceptive. Some economists say that the unemployment rate for blacks is closer to 30%. 1 in every 15 black men is incarcerated. That's a 500% increase since 1986. There have been more than 250,000 black on black homicides since 1976. Think about that. Can I say it again? 250,000 black on black homicides since 1976. The high school dropout rate among our poorest students approaches 60%. The federal minimum wage is $7.25 per hour, but nearly 7.7 million people are known as the working poor, workers who have incomes that put them below the poverty line. In several cities, the jobless rate for black men is well over 50%, And for black teenagers, it was over 40%. 49 million people, 16% of the American population are now in poverty, and 11 million of them are black. Although blacks represent 13% of the general population, they represent 28% of the poor population. This is the largest number ever recorded. 10 million American children are in poverty. 39% of black children under 18 years of age live in poverty, and 32% of households headed by a single woman are poor. More than 5 million more women than men live in poverty. Now you might say, well, man, these are some tough statistics. If we don't do something about it, they can only get worse. Were it not for unemployment insurance, 2.3 million more people would be in poverty. Blacks were almost a quarter of those receiving extended unemployment benefits. 21 million people were kept out of poverty by Social Security. But listen to this. A recent report found that more than 300,000 Americans with either master's degrees or PhD degrees were receiving food stamps. The picture for youth worldwide is just as bleak. It is estimated that 75 million young people are out of work around the world. And if you look at the revolutions that are going on all around the world and look at the faces of those who are revolting against their governments, it is the face of the young. More than 200 million young people around the earth are working but earning less than $2 a day. In the Middle East and North Africa, approximately 1 in 4 young people is without a job. The statistics for blacks in America have always been bad, and now they are truly ominous. Clearly, we are in a dire condition, and the government of America cannot solve our problem. I want you to understand this, brothers and sisters. You whose hope is in government to do this. Let me show you a little bit more. Even though we in 2013 are celebrating a black 2-term president, despite all of our hoping and dreaming, brother simply has not been able to repair the damage caused by centuries of racism, greed, which has now run this nation over a fiscal cliff. President Obama may have done his best to plug the holes of this fast sinking ship, but the fact is that when President Obama was sworn in on January 20th, 2009, the black unemployment rate was 12.7%. It now stands at 13.8%. Meanwhile, the wealth gap is now so wide that white Americans now have 22 times more wealth than the average black American. So even though one of our own has reached the pinnacle of American political system, his presence in that highest political office has not, cannot, and will not solve our problems. And our problems only appear to be getting worse. You might say, my God, Farrakhan, is it that bad, really? Look in your pocketbook. You tell me how bad it is. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad, over 50 years ago, said these words, quote, "We do not believe that America will ever be able to furnish enough jobs for her own millions of unemployed, in addition to jobs for now over 40 million black people." We marched on Washington in '63, and the cry was justice and jobs. 20 years later, we marched again in recognition of the March of '63. Our cry again was justice and jobs. And right now we're meeting together, leaders and organizations, and our cry is still the same: justice and jobs. We're begging the president, why don't you put up a jobs bill? And even if he did, if he cannot back the bill up by producing the jobs, and by the way, a jobs bill, they say, will only produce 3 million jobs. But there are 15 million out of work. Who do you think will get the jobs then? You? Does not history tell us that black people will always be the first fired and the last hired? Do you think that has changed because a black man is in the White House? Well, the scriptures have clearly shown that the judgment of Allah is against America. The Holy Qur'an in the 7th surah, the 130th verse says, quote, "And certainly we overtook Pharaoh's people with droughts and diminution of fruit, that they might be mindful." Is America under drought right now? Is there diminution of fruit right now? In the book of Psalms, the 105th chapter, the 16th verse, we read, "Moreover, God called for a famine upon the land." That is coming. These books make it clear that the judgment will be in the form of rain, hail, snow, and earthquakes. Now look at what President Obama just said a couple of weeks ago in his State of the Union address. Quote, "The fact is the 12 hottest years on record have all come in the last 15 years. Heat waves, droughts, wildfires, floods, all are now more frequent and more intense. We can choose to believe that Superstorm Sandy and the most severe drought in decades and the worst wildfires some states have ever seen were all just a freak coincidence. Or we can choose to believe in the overwhelming judgment of science and act before it's too late. Well, wait a minute. Now, if you want to believe in the overwhelming judgment of science, there's not science without a scientist. So the question you have to ask yourself is, and rain, hail, snow, and earthquake is science. Who is the scientist that's behind the natural disasters that are afflicting America? What Farrakhan is telling you, I represent that scientist. That's why I can say it, and it happens right after I say it. Take it or leave it alone. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad foretold of the coming of this great and dreadful day, and he preached about it for nearly a half a century. But he also tried mightily to prepare us for the inevitable. He set down for us a way to overcome our terrible condition and lift ourselves into true independence and self-sufficiency. He called it Muhammad's economic blueprint. And he said that if we followed this plan, it would make us strong, firm warriors in the battle to end poverty and want in the midst of plenty. And why did he call it an economic blueprint? What is economics? And what is a blueprint? And why an economic one rather than a spiritual, social, political, or religious one? All those will play on the economic plan, the spiritual, the moral, the social, and the political. But the word economics comes from the Greek oikonomikos, denoting the science of household management. But it has come to be defined as the science of production, distribution, and consumption of goods and services, or the material welfare of humanity. Now, a blueprint is something defined that acts as a plan, a model, or something providing guidance, a detailed plan or program of action. So if we're finally going to get our house in order, an economic blueprint is exactly what we need. But it is an economy with a divine definition. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad saw in Allah's creation the perfect representation of economy, the perfect management, thrift, and skill of avoiding waste, and the most efficient method for the distribution of wealth. We offer this human form as the greatest example of the distribution of wealth. I want you to look at it. And when you go home, if you want to check your weight while nobody's watching, take off your clothes. I want you in the mirror. Because this human form, it starts from one cell. Now there are billions of cells in this body. God started creation from one man. Now there are 7 billion human beings on our planet. But why are so many people hungry? Why are so many people deprived of the essentials of life? If this is a model, let's look at it. You have food that comes in through the mouth. It goes down into one place where it is digested and oxidized, turned into a liquid, and then sent throughout the body where every organ, every cell, every muscle is fed only according to its need. The heart that is well fed is not arguing with the liver, and the liver is not trying to take anything away from the kidney. Everything is being fed by this system that shows us perfect distribution of wealth. Every system has its individual function, and they work together for the common good of the whole. When the heart is diseased, something is missing. If the liver is diseased, well, what you have is a human community that is diseased. This is why there are uprisings all over the earth, because the people are not getting what they need to survive. Why? It's the system of distribution, a capitalist system of distribution of wealth. This is not capitalism. This is a socialist system. Are you advocating socialism, fair can? I'm advocating what God has set up that makes every cell comfortable, that sets the body up, that when you eat proper, think proper, your health is well taken care of, and none of your organs react because they all are being fed what they need. Now imagine if such a system of government existed, who would go to bed on this earth hungry? Who would be deprived of education? The earth is not ours. The earth is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof. We are stewards of it while we are here. The question is, we know that the present stewards, they're not the ones. In fact, I point you to Jesus and his parable of the wicked husbandman. I don't have time to go into it now, but the earth was let out into the hands of some wicked husbandmen, and they weren't bringing in the fruit thereof. So people came in to the vineyard to see whether the fruit was as it should be. And some they beat and some they killed. And then the heir to the vineyard came and they killed him. So Jesus asked the members of the Jewish community that he was talking to. He said, "What will the Lord do when he comes?" And they answered, saying, "He will utterly slay those wicked husbandmen." Now, it's clear that their stewardship is what has led to the condition of the earth today. And it demands a new steward. So the question you and I have to ask, since God promises that he will take the kingdom from them and give it to whom he pleases. If God gives us kingdom and makes us stewards over the creation, what kind of stewards are we going to be? We are hoping that we can become better students through economics, through agriculture, through animal husbandry, through a moral and ethical rebirth, though all of the associated industries and technologies that can come from the land will be shared by all those who live on the land. We must now get on with the serious business of how to live and share the value of our life with each other and become human beings rather than beasts and serpents that are destroying human life from the womb to the tomb. So with this divine creation as our most economical model, let us look at this blueprint that will, by Allah's grace and mercy, finally end poverty and want among our people. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad outlined some basic principles before he gave us details. Number one, recognize the necessity for unity and group operation. Do you understand that if we can work together as a group in unity, we will be more successful, more powerful, more able to do the things that as individuals working by ourselves, we have never been able to do. Two, pool your resources physically as well as financially. Stop wanton criticism of everything that is black owned and operated. Four, keep in mind that jealousy destroys from within. Fifth, observe the operations of the white man. He is successful. He makes no excuses for his failures. He works hard in a collective manner. You do the same. Now, these are things that we must do. Let's go on. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad asked us to commit to save 5 cents a day. What? What? Yes. He said if we can save just 5 cents a day from our wages, 25 cents a week for 52 weeks in the year, that would mean we would put aside $13 a year that we could save in a national savings treasury. At that time that he wrote this, we numbered 22 million people and approximately 5 million were wage earners. Well, if 5 million wage earners save $13 a year, this would mean 65 million saved out of our wages in 1 year. At the rate of 25 cents per week, it would be painless. Now wait, we just getting started. Now look, today, brothers and sisters, don't you think we can do better than what we were asked to do 48 years ago? According to government statistics, there are a little over 16 million blacks employed at some level. Well, look what happens if we raise the economic bar and contribute the same nickel a day. But we do it 7 days a week with the working force of 16 million. Look at this. 7 days times 1 nickel a day, 35 cents a week. Do you have it?
Yes, sir.
Isn't that painless?
Yes, sir.
You know you don't like pain.
No, sir.
Look at this. 52 weeks in a year, so that amounts to $18.20 per year. And if everybody in this room, everybody listening by television, everybody under the sound of my voice gave $18.20 a year, multiply that by 16 million in the working force. Now we got $291,200,000 in just 1 year. 291 million. Look at the power of pennies, nickels, and dimes if all of us did this. Can you see the picture? Look, we want to do exactly as Isaiah the prophet said. They will rebuild the ancient ruins and restore the places long devastated. They will renew the ruined cities that have been devastated for generations. Don't we live in cities? Are the places where we live ruined? Are there many abandoned buildings where we live? Do you own them? You walk by them. You smoke reefers and crack in them. If this resembles any person's living or dead, it's not a coincidence. Now look. That's just 291, nearly $300 million painless. Now I'm going to show you more that we can do with the help of God. I just want you to see the picture, because once you see the picture, it's done. Now watch this. Isaiah 58:12 says that they will be the restorer of streets to dwell in. Look at the streets where we dwell. See, if we started saving money, simple little pennies, we'll show you more of what we can do. And look at this. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad says, and to do this, we start with land. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad wrote, the farm is the engine of our national life. Look at the disrespect you have for farmers. Oh, that he's a farmer. Ain't nothing to him. He's a farmer. I beg your pardon. Doctor, you in the house? Lawyer, you in the house? Teacher, you in the house? Preacher, you in the house? Tell me something. If you don't eat well, how long will you practice law? If you don't eat well, you become the patient, doctor. So don't look down on a farmer, look up to a farmer, because today it will be us farming our own land, producing our own food that will save our lives. Everywhere I have traveled, where we live, black people are not producing food to feed our populations in Africa, in the Caribbean, in Central and South America. Why is that? Why are we buying food in the Caribbean from America, from Australia, from England, from Europe, from France? Why are you doing this when the land under your foot is rich? It hurts me to travel and see us so dependent on others for the basic necessities of life when the richness of our land is there to produce all that we need and then some. America is for sale, but we are not owning it. We helped build this. Our sweat and blood was used to protect it. Shouldn't we be co-owners of it? See, you got to think like that now.
That's right.
I don't want to walk streets that we don't own. Everybody can look at their community and say, this is ours. You're the only people that has a community that's owned by things and people that live outside of our community. This shows that there's something wrong with us mentally. Now, since our slave masters' children put their faces on the dollar, I think Jackson is on a $20 bill, not Jesse. Since you call the $100 bill Benjamins, that ain't your Benjamin. That's their Benjamin. But if they like their face so much, yes, let's collect as many of their faces as we can. Mr. Charlie, look, see your face on the dollars. Mr. Charlie, what we want is all the land that's in the Delta. We want to start in Arkansas. Same way they started, buying the land, working the hell out of us, picking the cotton to make America rich and strong. Let's go back over that road. Let's take their faces, give it back to them. We don't want more fiat money. We want land. Then we can buy the tools that will make us productive on the land, from which will spring all kinds of businesses that inspire entrepreneurs, not people that are begging somebody else for a job, but you're creating jobs. Then we can grow into a solid economic foundation for us, but without the land, we have no basis for real capital development. Plus, we are an international people. Our brothers and sisters are all over the world, desirous of doing business with us. But if we are not producing anything, we can't enter into trade and commerce with the nations of the earth.
Wasn't that great? We hope you enjoyed part 30 of the time and what must be done on this most important subject of Muhammad's economic blueprint. Next week, we will air part 31, which is the continuation on this great subject. We want to encourage all of you to subscribe to the Final Call newspaper, the digital edition. Go to finalcall.com to subscribe so that you can get every week your e-edition of the greatest newspaper on our planet, the Final Call. Also, we have the Final Call radio, streaming the messages of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan 24 hours a day. Go to finalcall.com and you can hear inspirational messages of guidance and wisdom and knowledge from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan 24 hours a day. Join us this Sunday for another timely message of guidance in a time of trouble. This Sunday will begin, actually it begins on Friday, the holy month of Ramadan. It is the time that all of the Muslims throughout the world devote this month to fasting, to praying, recitation of the Qur'an, and acts of kindness. But this Sunday we want to talk about the new developments in this COVID-19, and our subject will deal with the Passover and the things that God is telling us in this COVID-19 and what has been recently reported from the United Nations of famine that's on the horizon. Tune in, invite your friends and your family to hear another message of divine guidance and instructions to not only the black community, but to the brown, to the yellow, the red, and even to the white. For indeed, Allah has given to us all that we need to help us to survive in a time of trouble. Thank you again for joining us, and we would like to close as we began our program with prayer. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, all praise is due to Allah, the Lord of the worlds, the Beneficent, the Merciful, Master of the day of judgment in which we now live. Thee alone do we worship, in thine aid we seek. O Allah, guide us on the right path, the path of those upon whom you have bestowed favors, not the path of those upon whom your wrath is brought down, nor of those who go astray after they have heard thy teachings. Ameen.